This episode of the Cascadian Beer Podcast has been made possible by the BC Ale Trail. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at the bcaletrail.ca. Welcome to the Cascadian Beer Podcast. My name's Aaron and I'm a Cascadian. In this podcast series, I profile the breweries of Cascadia, a region that has a strong presence in the international beer scene. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast, and I sure hope you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That way you'll never miss an episode. Cascadia is a bioregion in the Pacific Northwest and the North American continent. It's made up of the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon, as well as the Canadian province of British Columbia. In this podcast series, I highlight the breweries of Cascadia, a region that has a strong presence in the international beer scene. Last summer, I was enjoying and slightly melting in the heat of the Okanagan while visiting Kelowna, BC. Kettle River Brewing Company is a small batch neighborhood brewery that has seen great support from the community as well as the local industry. Opening their doors in 2016, they've since expanded and added to their location. I sat down with some of the team from Kettle River Brewing.
My name is Chris Dudinsky. I'm one of the partners at Kettle River and your general manager around here. I float between the back and the front.
I'm Wilson and I brew.
My name's Russ. I'm the other half of the partners and I do a lot of the administrative stuff and then anything else maintenance wise, whatever needs to be done around here.
Sweet. We're at Kettle River in beautiful Kelowna. Thank you so much. This is 3 panels. Yeah. I think I've only had one other episode here with 3 guests. So yeah, we're doing good here.
We showed up in force.
So the first question is, how long you been open here?
Will be 3 years, July 16th, I think.
Cool. And question for all of you, how did beer find you?
I guess my beer taste kind of just evolved over the past, before starting this, over the, say half a dozen years before starting this, you just start with the gateway beers and then you get into it. And of course, like Fat Tug was one of the big ones for me. And then what really got me into the brewery scene was going down to visit Chris in Vancouver. He lived in East Van and the breweries around there, were just great and walking distance. And it came to the point where it was like, why don't we have this in Kelowna? And that's kind of where it started.
It was just Tree at the time, right? When you were thinking about this. So
yeah. And then I think about probably 8 months before we opened. No, probably more than that. A year before we opened, B&A started. So,
well,
yeah.
All right, cool. How about you, Wilson? How did beer find you?
Hieroglyphs.
Right.
Hieroglyphics.
Right. You're a man from the past?
No, seriously, I was in Australia and there was a brew pub there and had the beer timeline and this is hieroglyphics on the wall. And I was like, started researching the history of beer. I've always been in the industry. I was doing a lot of hospitality and managing bars and the brew revolution happened during that period and it kind of swept me under its wing and here I am.
All right, sweet. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I came to it in, a little bit of a roundabout way. I mean, being in Vancouver, there's lots of stuff like Phillips around. I was enjoying that. And my background previous was in advertising. So I was enjoying beers like, say, Granville Island or something maybe a little bit bigger. And then, like Russ was saying, Parallel 49 opened up about a block from me and that kind of changed everything. And
slightly
hooked ever since.
Right, cool. So just the idea of Kettle River, how did that start? Like, how did the conversation start?
Yeah, Russell field this one.
I mean, the idea for the brewery itself, just starting a brewery, it was kind of Chris and I sitting on my back deck, and we were talking about how great the beer scene in Vancouver is, and why we don't have it here. And we're like, well, I'm good at fixing things, and you're really good at the advertising side of things or the marketing side of things. And maybe if we find a brewer, we could start our own brewery.
And then, Chris, how did you find Wilson there?
Wilson came serendipitously.
Right.
Since opening, we've moved through a few different brewers, and it just so happened that Brad, who has been here kind of since we opened, was leaving to start his own thing. And, within a very short time span, Wilson had reached out, and it, felt like the right move as soon as we met him,
Perfect
So far,
timing.
so good.
Perfect time on your part, huh?
We haven't killed each other yet.
Right. So what were you dealing with, Wilson, when you came here? Like, have the styles changed much under your reign, and what do you tend to focus on?
I would say it's changed. The core beers are here. I've added a few little bits and pieces, but I think just the way that we do things is a little bit different. There was a lot of stuff here that is very good. The core brands, the Loose Canoe and the ABC, the Pale Ale, and things like that. But just to add a little bit more variety, we've looked at some of the styles and we've just perfected them, and we've added a few things that we think that will be crowd pleasers.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of your ESB.
Thank you very much. And that was kind of a group effort. It was something that we talked about, and this is what we do. We figure these things out between us, and then we just try and implement them and try and make them work for the people out there. So.
Right. So how was opening day then, Chris? Like, how were you received by the community?
Oh, opening day was nuts. I mean, there was and still is quite a demand for craft beer, and people are really excited about it in town. Right from the opening, there was a whole bunch of people that were lined up and ready to go. And as a few other spots in town have opened, we've kind of seen the community grow, and seen people get excited and learn more about.
So not a diminish in participation, just more awareness, right?
Totally, yeah. It's been maintained since opening, and we're doing our best to make changes now to keep the excitement going along with all the new spots in town.
And what would some of those changes be?
Well, we're looking at I guess the biggest one is a kitchen space. Mm-hmm. Since opening, we were working with the girls from the Crasian Food Truck, who are good friends of ours. And they're going to move in here and take over an awesome new kitchens under the title of Provisions. So we're super excited about that. And that's going to be open, in the next couple of weeks here, as soon as we can. And then along with that, we're doing some changes with our, kind of tasting room area to be a bit more accommodating to food service, as well as expanding our patio. So instead of we have a little strip outside right now. It's about a car parking space. It's going to be the whole front and a little bit more comfortable to hang out and enjoy the sun.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
So then do you guys package your products at all?
We have previously, in kind of the off season when it's a bit slower. Kelowna is a pretty, good tourism town. So we try and offset some of our sales through previously, bomber bottles and moving them to a few, select liquor stores around town. Moving into this winter, we are looking at maybe a few different options. We haven't quite settled on it yet due to what's been keeping us busy currently with the renos and everything. But you can expect to see a small amount of packaged product.
Yeah. But like with that packaged product also comes volume demands, right? So like what's the size of your brew house, and like what do you need to do to accommodate that?
Work harder,
right.
Brew faster. It's going to be something that we have to work out and work through. But at the moment, we're just about keeping up. We've had a few issues just because of volume. We're just selling a lot more product out the front. So in the autumn, hopefully, we'll be able to make a plan and see if we're not going to talk about expansions yet, but we got a lot of things going on. But
what's the size that you're currently dealing with?
It's 5 barrel.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we've got 5 fermenters.
We operate like a brew pub, so we're really not interested in trying to take over the world with distribution. Mm-hmm. But we'd really like to offer some takeaway product for our guests, and
so maybe like in the form of like a crowler or something like that.
You got it. That would be the most realistic in here for you to see, kind of rolling into fall and through this winter.
Right.
I'm in conversation with Kettle River Brewing. Now, Kelowna is a big booming craft beer region in the province, and the best way to discover what else you can find is by visiting the bcaletrail.ca. The BC Ale Trail showcases many parts of the province, and on the website you'll find recommended itineraries for each region, a comprehensive list of every craft brewery in BC, a calendar of beer events, and a blog with lots of great stories. The regional ale trails include local breweries, pubs, and restaurants, along with other activities the area has to offer. So whether you're planning a weekend trip or being a tourist in your own backyard, let the BC Ale Trail guide you to your next beer adventure. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at the bcaletrail.ca. All right, let's jump back into conversation with Kettle River.
In terms of the 3 years that you've been opened, like how much of a change have you seen in Kelowna? Like, is there quite a wide variety in terms of beer styles, in terms of what's on offer, or is it kind of still kind of middle of the road in terms of what everybody's doing?
I'd call it fairly general, but there's definitely some people that are pushing towards style-specific production. Like if you look at our friends up at Wild Ambition, they're doing some really cool, sour, wild stuff that, is really specific to them, and it's worth going out there to check them out. And, if you go to Ollie at Boundary Brewing, he's doing German-specific styles, and, we're a bit more on the West Coast end of things. So there are a different range as far as consumers go. I think people are pretty open to whatever right now. You definitely still get some of the folks that walk in and ask for your lightest, closest to Budweiser, but then you also get someone who's really excited about a barrel-aged barley wine. So a little bit of everything.
All right, sweet. Just expansion plans. I mean, like that's pretty much where you're going. Is the kitchen at the moment? Looking at possible packaging things, and you're just happy with the size. You're like not looking to build a second location or anything like that, or.
No, definitely no desire to make a second location. I think you can expect to see from us once these renos are done and we've kind of worked through the front of house changes to be looking at some, additional volume in the back so we can, be a bit more consistent on the different SKUs we're producing as well as how we roll out that bit of packaged product. So it's, available and not just, here for a week and then gone for 6 weeks or something like that. So moving into our production schedule in the back this fall is going to be, a lot of our focus.
So in terms of opening up a brewery, what would be some advice that you could give somebody who's looking to do that?
Let Russ do this one.
I don't know. Find a bunch of money. I don't know. It's the biggest thing. When we started this, we kind of just asked our moms and aunts and uncles for a little bit of investment and had a little bit of our own cash. And, it was the hard way to do it. We started really small. And, we started on like 1 barrel. Basically, our last brew kit was one barrel. We had 16 1-barrel fermenters, and that's how we rolled into our first, 1.5 years. And
must have been a relief with 5 barrels.
Well, 5 barrels huge. But it's just the way we could do it with what we had. I mean, obviously, the more resources you have, the better. I don't know. I'm sure there's tons of things that we could tell you that we did wrong.
Yeah, the list is bottomless. I think some good advice that it is to be as handy as you can or know folks that can help you fix things, whether it's, your glycol unit or, I don't know, if your boiler's acting up or something. Anyone, if you can do it better, but if you got a buddy that can come and have a look, that goes a long way. And we've been really lucky with a lot of, close friends that have been able to step in and help us out or, neighboring breweries or what have you.
And Wilson, what could somebody do to make better beer?
How to make better beer? Just be consistent, do your research, think about all the variables, and dream. There's a lot of dreaming. Just be exciting. Try and do things differently. There's a lot of good beers out there, and there's a lot that aren't. Mm-hmm. So I think just practice what you know, try and do it well, be consistent, and just be interesting.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Thanks.
Huge thank you to Chris, Wilson, and Russ for their time, especially since construction was going on. So since this taping of this episode, they have since opened the Provisions Kitchen and expanded their patio outside. So lots has happened. And you know what? I saw on their Instagram the other day, there's some cans sneaking around. So everything they're talking about, they've done. So there we go. So be sure to check them out there in Kelowna. Can't wait to go up and visit them again. I checked out the expanded patio a few months ago, and you know what? I'm looking forward to just spending some more time there because I really love the guys at Kettle River. Thanks a lot again, guys. And thanks again to the BC Ale Trail for making this episode possible. You can visit them at bcaletrail.ca. If you want to follow along with this podcast series, you can by going to the website, cascadian.beer. What do you know? You can also follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/CascadianBeer or on Twitter at CascadianBeer and on Instagram at CascadianBeer Podcast. Thank you so much again for your time. I really hope you subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app so you won't miss the next episode, and hope you share it with a friend too. I really appreciate your time. And until next time, remember, support your local.